Momentarily, we're going to open up the floor to some questions for our fire researchers and George here. But I wanted to finish up with our portion of this presentation today by speaking to those individuals in the audience who are lucky enough to work in an area in which you're getting multiple companies and multiple personnel arriving within minutes to fight structure fires. Do we have any individuals that are in the audience? Okay. Urban fire departments, some of your larger suburban fire departments and big city fire departments often have very specific operations that are spelled out in their books, as we call it. Okay. The house that you see here, an urban private dwelling. This is any town USA private dwelling that you'll see. And George's department, my department, have specific operations for every type of fire building that we'll encounter. We have typical fire buildings in Milwaukee, and in New York we have procedures for each one. I get 35 people coming in the city of Milwaukee, George gets 60. So essentially what George and I are managing as chief officers are adequate resources, as we'll call it, okay? I have 3 engines, 3 trucks, 3 chiefs, and a rescue company all coming within 5 to 7 minutes. Okay? They know where they're supposed to go based on their order of arrival, when they're supposed to be there, and what they're supposed to be carrying when they get there. It's spelled out. I mean, we're not robots, but essentially we know based on our order of arrival on the response ticket that's printed out what I'll be doing at this particular incident based on the type of fire building I see when I pull up. Okay? Are there any inherent issues with that? What do you think they are? That many people coming within 5 to 7 minutes? No, not freelance. Okay? Every one of those 35 individuals wants to do something as soon as they get there, right? Okay? If I'm the first new truck, I'm operating on the fire floor. If I'm the second new truck, I'm going to the floor above. I know that every time. And I'm doing exterior horizontal ventilation. If I have an outside vent firefighter, rear vent firefighter, whatever you call them. Okay? They all want to do something when they get there. Okay? So, as chief officers, you also have to kind of take that perspective and realize I might need to hold people up. Okay? There usually isn't much radio chatter in the first few minutes of any of our structure fires because of that. They're spreading out. Okay? But maybe you need to hop on the radio and say, hold that window. No, we're having issues with the line. Don't take any windows. Okay? That kind of stuff needs to be taking place. Another inherent problem is, and one of the fallacies is I don't really need to incorporate all this stuff because I can start water in under 5 minutes in a lot of our areas of our city. Okay? Anybody hear that? You hearing that argument? Yeah, it's out there. Okay? And with that, we are not seeing individuals that are considering a transitional attack. Do I need to do a transitional attack on every single fire? If I have fire out one window, do I have to do a transitional attack every time on that window? No, you don't. Okay? Not only are your buildings building specific, or your operations building specific, they have to be fire specific as well now, as well. Okay? So keep that in consideration. And transitional attack has kind of been vilified as this thing that big cities shouldn't have to do or don't have to do because I get 2 or 3 holes on stretched right away. Okay? So when you all was in the city of Milwaukee last July, we talked about extensively. We talked about, when will we incorporate it? Well, if I can't get my hose line placed on the primary means of egress because of the fire conditions, I'm going to do something about it. And we came up with, a few scenarios in which an urban city or, a department with multiple people arriving in companies would incorporate it. And so we said, what we're going to do? We're going to film it. We're going to film a real-time transitional attack on how it should look when everybody's pulling up and everybody wants to do something. Okay. We captured on a couple angles some very good footage of it all coming together and showing that transitional attack or resetting the fire or hitting it hard from the air, whatever you want to call it, isn't necessarily a defeatist position or stance on the fire ground. It isn't a defensive operation, writing off the operation, writing off victims in the structure because we have these specific fire conditions now. Okay? We are showing, and I'm going to show you in a second here, that it can take an advanced fire condition, convert it to a minor fire condition or reducing those temperatures, and actually taking fires out. Some chiefs would write off, and I'll let you guys decide when you see the fire conditions here whether or not you would call it if you were a chief officer and you pull up on scene. And taking a lot more of those fires and making those offensive fires. Okay, utilizing this tactic we're about to show you will afford you that ability to do a lot more of that. So something to consider. Okay. All right, here we have our unoccupied 2.5-story wood frame private dwelling. First two engines pulling up. Here comes the truck that's right behind it out of the same firehouse. Would you consider this an advanced fire? I fire all 3 windows, right? Do I have a life hazard in the structure? You don't yet. Now we do. What do we see here? You may not see it now. I should probably add this. You'll see in a second here. That's the first company officer who's about to do his 360. He's being grabbed by the occupant of that structure who is saying, I have a child on the first floor in her bedroom. What's the tenability on that first floor? Or what's our survivability profile of that woman's young child? Okay. Keep your answers for a moment when Steve gets back up here. We're going to talk about some of the temperatures we'll see. Okay. So what we have here is the first 2 engines and trucks, or first and second engine are pulling up, first 2 truck, and the rescue are pulling up. In Milwaukee, we stretch to the back door in these private dwellings because that's where the interior stairs to access every level of the structure is. So they're going to start working on the door. Okay, first 2 engine is starting the line, second 2 engine is going to help them. Now what do you see? Fire's going up. Okay, we have asphalt shingling on here, or Polish brick as we call it in Milwaukee. I'm half Polish, I can use that one. But that contributes to an interior and now an exterior fire spread. Okay? But rather than sit there and watch that truck bang the tools together for a few minutes, the first 2 engine now has a charged line. What can they do? Hit it for 3 or 4 seconds. Now look what happens. Door's forced, they're going to control it. Everyone's masking up, they're going right in. There's still plenty of fire in this structure. Plenty of fire, as you can see in that center window there. How long do you think all this took? I think this entire video is maybe 2 minutes and 30 seconds? Okay. Would you consider that an aggressive offensive interior attack? Yeah. Okay. How many of us have sat there with a charged hose line, busting the truck's chops because they can't force the door or they're stuck at force blancher or something? We're sitting there with a charged line with fire out numerous windows. Anybody ever have that been there? I sure have, you bet. Okay? But, okay, we're getting kind of our heads on straight here with a lot of this stuff. I have a known life hazard inside this structure. I have an advanced fire condition. I may have a savable occupant, I may not. But I have 35 firefighters that want to get inside that fire building because we have that known life hazard. And now we afforded them the opportunity to do that in a much more tenable environment, much safer environment, and it allows us to get our hose line in there faster and the truck and the rescue in there faster to start looking for that 4-year-old kid. Okay? So that's what we really wanted to end with here today. This was actually, if you look on the far right, this is actually a helmet cam from one of the firefighters I was recording. Okay? We had numerous angles of this, and each angle had just a really great perspective. So consider this, folks. Just because you work for a big city means you can't incorporate this stuff. Okay? You may not, the way you implement it may be different from a smaller or rural community, but the principles still apply. Okay? Thank you, folks.
The beauty of this is it's not just a demonstration. It's an experiment as well. So we're taking measurements to understand the effectiveness. What you see here, the 4 dots in those rooms, are temperature measurements that we're taking floor to ceiling. You can see how much water they flowed in each one of the openings. He started with the living room on the front, 4 seconds of water there, 2 seconds of water in the bathroom, 3 seconds in one window in the kitchen, 5 seconds in the second window of the kitchen, off the ceiling, Arrival to water flow, pretty much when they pulled the maxi brake of the engine until they were flowing water, was 1 minute and 10 seconds. And it took them 30 seconds till they were ready to get inside. They were forcing the door, getting ready to go, flowing 14 seconds of water at about 150 gallons a minute. That initial knockdown, 35 gallons of water. Here's what the living room temperatures look like. So the first place they flowed water, before water was 600 degrees at 3 feet. Before they went in, it was 200 degrees at 3 feet. In the kitchen, before water, 1,300 degrees. After water, right before entry, 300 degrees. The open bedroom, before water was 500 degrees. Before entry was 200 degrees. This is a bedroom that is directly behind the kitchen fire room that was 1,300 plus degrees. And then the closed bedroom, the label's wrong there, but the closed bedroom, 70 degrees to 70 degrees. Where's your survivable space in that house? What's the quickest way to get rescuers in there to pull someone out of that room? They got to go through the other 3 rooms of fire to get there. They're either going to VEIS that, or if the fire gets knocked down that fastly, as the engine goes in, the truck and the rescuer right behind them, they're getting in that room, affecting that rescue. So you can see what a dramatic effect that 14 seconds of water in the right places with the fire coming out of the window dramatically reduced temperatures throughout that space, making it so all those guys could get in there and do work.
All right, folks, as you can see, you have the ulfirefightersafety.com site on here. You get a lot of the technical reports and everything that we've been discussing today, as well as Dan Majkowski's section of NIST. So a lot of great information there. What we're going to do now is kind of open the floor for any questions you have. We have 3 microphones, set up here. Ask questions, folks. I know it's the end of the day. It's beer 30, but I know some of you guys have questions. Come on. Please come to the mic, though, so everyone in the room can hear you.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Very good.
Great to see you again this year. This is the biggest draw to FDIC, is seeing you guys, and I appreciate you coming again. Have you guys done anything with opposing hose streams at all and that kind of thing? How that affects anything?
In Spartanburg, in that 2-story that we saw, after we knocked down the fire in those rooms, we had some fire spreading into the attic, and so we let it redevelop basically across the second floor. And then anywhere we had an open window, we flowed a line. We had basically a monitor nozzle coming from the one side, 2 hand lines in the front, monitor nozzle on the other side, knocked the fire down very quickly. Again, a lot of the opposing hose streams might be an issue if we're changing pressure, right? And if you physically are hitting somebody with the hose stream, that's not a pleasant thing. What we're advocating for this initial resetting of the fire is cooling the gases, taking the gases. So we want you to hit it high, bounce it off the ceiling. So basically whatever you're using, a solid stream or a straight stream, it becomes a broken stream at that point in time, taking away any concerns about impacting somebody that might be inside by hitting him head on with 180 gallons per minute of water or something like that.
A lot of it comes down to air, paying attention to the air. That if you're going to have a master stream that is 50 feet away from the building and it's broken up by the time it gets to the window and it completely fills the window, and you have a crew with another hose line coming in a different direction, if the water isn't allowing the vent to continue to be an exhaust, it's got to go somewhere. And if we're moving air in both directions, we're going to have flow going in both directions. Are we going to have fire envelope everybody? No. But can you have some heat move if you have air moving it and you start blocking exits? Absolutely. So it's understanding that and coordinating that. And if you understand that and can coordinate it, you can have 2 different hose teams operating in 2 different areas as long as you're doing it right. And in many cases, a lot of what we've looked at has been initial company operations and the placement of the first hose line dictating operations, in which case the fire usually goes away in which case opposing hose lines doesn't become an issue because we don't have an entire floor of fire. Even in the Spartanburg, there was 3 or 4 rooms. In the Milwaukee incident, there was 3 rooms of fire, all taken care of very quickly with one hose line. We haven't done anything with floors of commercial buildings on fire where you've got a center core, an entire floor of furniture on fire with multiple hose lines working around a center core building. We have not done that.
But we have incidents like the Cook County building where the city of Chicago did that. On the 12th floor, exterior streams, the fire remained in its, the compartmentation that was there kept the fire to the basically 25% of the floor of that building, and they knocked it out like that, where they couldn't get to it with an interior attack.
Question over here.
My name's Eric out of Park City, Utah. Question for you about positive pressure attacks and positive pressure ventilation. Our department's been somewhat progressive and firm on this fire attack method for a while now. This past couple months, I've been trying to implement the SLICERS acronym, and I think it's awesome. We have a lot of guys that are giving us heartache over it, though, when it comes to the vent limited entry after knockdown, because they're still very much hung up on the positive pressure aspect of it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see in the future incorporating positive pressure ventilation tactics with the SLICERS acronym? I hope maybe it's a little more insight in that area.
Sure. So this December, we conducted a series of, 20, how many was it, Julie? 24, 20, it's something like 24 different experiments looking at better understanding positive pressure attack. We also had a number of scenarios where we combined transitional attack with positive pressure attack. And we're in the process of analyzing all that data, and we'll package it all up. And by next FDIC, we'll have a full-blown training program that incorporates all of that. And probably as part of the Science in the Big Room session, we'll be talking about all the results of those tests. It's understanding the tactics, understanding how they fit together, doing the tools in the toolbox approach that George talked about, and deploying them in a way that makes sense. So I'm not going to tell you how to fight your fires, but I'll tell you the impacts of the different tactics and how possibly they can be pieced together for a good outcome.
And I will tell you that there are fire departments around the country that have been doing that for years. They hit it from the outside, typically rural departments in Montana, Colorado. They have fire shown from the outside. They hit it from the outside. In the meantime, they set up the fan at the front door, and then they go in and get it. They reset the fire and then start using PPA.
With good results.
With good results.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Jeff. From Bluffton, South Carolina. And what's interesting is the control of air that seems to be kind of the topic right now. So I'm curious from either of the chiefs, do your departments have your dispatchers notify occupants when they're leaving to shut the doors? And is that being helpful?
Yeah, it's actually the last thing our dispatchers usually say. They'll say, exit the building and please close your door behind you. Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, they've been doing that long before the science, but that's a good point. It's definitely something to, or a good crusade on the dispatch side, without a doubt.
I think that would be an awesome public education.
Good question. Thank you.
Normally they darken the lights and play music.
Hey, in a transitional attack approach, have there been any studies done on the effects of steam conversion to victims as far as flow path through the building, that sort of thing?
That's something that continues to be worked on. In fact, just at the hot class, anybody that was there Tuesday, we conducted a test where there was a fire in the second-story bedroom. We were assuming that a victim might be laying in the hallway outside, so we had heat flux gauges in the hallway. We had thermocouples in the hallway, and we also had a thermal imager view in the hallway. And very similar to the thermal imager view you saw today when they introduced water from the first floor into the 2 windows that were burning on the second floor, knocked the fire down, conditions in the hallway got better. The heat flux, which started at about 7 to 8 kilowatts per meter squared, reduced down to 2 kilowatts per meter squared. So once you get about a threshold of 5 kilowatts per meter squared on bare skin, you're feeling pain within seconds. So that victim would have been feeling pain from the thermal energy from the hot gases overhead. And once it was hit, we didn't see any spike that you might see if we were providing additional heat due to the water condensing on the skin or anything like that. It cooled right down. UL is hoping to get a new grant to do some work where they're going to look at using pig skins and heat flux gauges as well again to get the show me part of it to the fire service to say, well, look what happens, did it burn or not, type of thing. Another thing to remember is that there's some misunderstanding going around about tenability limits for humans. And everybody understands that has a sauna, or up in the North Country, a sauna, as they call it, right? The dry sauna, you could take a higher temperature than a wet sauna, and that's because water is a better conductor of heat than dry air is. But the thing to keep in mind is that one of the principal combustion products, anytime you're burning any kind of hydrocarbons, such as these foams and plastics and things, and even wood, is water vapor. So H2O is one of the combustion products. So you never have a scenario where your victim is laying in a hot, dry area. They're always in a hot, moist area. So there's already hot, moist air there impacting them before you even arrive.
Okay. I got a question right here.
Yes. Could you touch on the effect of wind in relation to flow paths and things of that nature?
Absolutely. The wind produces a pressure against the building. As part of the size up, wind is what you want to consider. You want to keep the wind at your back. Let the wind work with you. Anybody that does any wildland fire work, that's just beat into them. That's about a third of their book. Figure out what the wind is and be upwind of the fire. Keep the wind at your back. It's the same thing with structure fires. Anybody in the room was there on the day 2 of the hot training? Yeah, so we had about a 40-mile-an-hour wind that was hitting the rear of the structure, and we had a vent on the side of the structure. And the structure started basically acting like an airplane wing. So what it did was, instead of pushing the fire in the structure, it actually sucked the flame out of the structure. But again, getting upwind of the fire is your best location. Anything from FD&Y you want to mention?
No, I mean, we went through the whole challenge of wind-driven fires and high-rise fireproof multiple dwellings and a series of line-of-duty deaths. And it was enlightening when we started dealing with NIST at the time to find out that a 10-mile-per-hour wind was more than enough to change conditions in a matter of seconds. And we call it now wind-impacted fires, but that could allow the fire to blowtorch along the flow path, high pressure to low pressure. And whether it be Vandalia Avenue or Jimmy Williams, we had a number of those fires where tragically firefighters lost their lives. And now, sometimes in a high-rise building, on upper floors, you can't choose what direction you're going to attack the fire from because there is only one direction, up the stairs and down the hallway. That's why now we have wind control devices, we have high-rise nozzles to control that thermal hazard prior to us making entry onto the fire floor.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, just for clarification for me, is the data showing as far as flow paths and introducing water that as long as we're just introducing water without fog pattern or any additional pressure, we're not pushing the fire, but by the laws of thermodynamics, we're actually allowing the fire path to pull the cooler gases through?
That's a correct understanding, because the thing to remember is the fire service was always taught that as you would apply water, put water into a heated space, what did they say the water would do? It would expand 1,700 times, right? But the thing that counteracts that is if you already have these expanded hot gases that are in the house and you cool them down from 1,800 degrees down to 200 degrees or less, what do? They contract the same amount. So you're balancing that. So the key is don't play around with it and try to put 5 gallons per water in there. Hit it, 100 gallons, 150 gallons, 180 gallons. Open the line, hit it, knock it down. I know that Steve in his example showed that they only used 14 seconds of water. Please don't anyone run out of here and say, we're putting in our SOP, we're going to apply 14 seconds of water. You're looking for an impact, right? If you can impact it in a few seconds, knock it down and move on to the next window, or your guys are ready to go interior perfect, you may need to flow for 30 seconds in one window or more to get the impact that you're looking for to knock it down before you make entry.
And one of the things quite often I get asked, Chief, how long should we flow water from the exterior? And I use Dan's line, it depends. But one of the things that I think, or two of the things you should look at is how effective has that exterior stream been at knockdown and controlling the fire? And then with your resources and the physical layout of the structure, how long is it going to take you to reposition that hose line into the structure where the main body of fire was, to continue final extinguishment? And if you say, well, the door's right here and the stairs are there, we're going to be up the stairs, it's only going to take us 10 seconds, okay, fine. But now if you have to reposition that hose line around the front, go through the front door, and you say, you know what, Chief, potentially it could take us a couple of minutes, a minute and a half, flow a little bit more water. Or as Dan said, if that line's just going in, hitting the ceiling, and basically turning that room into what? A sprinklered space, right? You're creating a sprinkler head in that room. Well, could you even leave one member out on that exterior hose line, continuing to flow water, and a secondary backup line go inside? Again, we're not dealing with that opposing hose lines where you're going to get hit with a blast of water in the face because it's going off the ceiling. And when that interior crew is in position to advance into the fire area, engine 2 to command, we're in position, have them shut down the exterior line. Then we're going from exterior line to interior line.
Okay, we'll take one final question over here.
Questions about ventilation-limited basement fires. When the fire hasn't self-vented, tactics for that. And there's concern about the stability of the floor.
Water in anywhere. Window, any kind of door, any kind of opening where you can flow water. If the only way to introduce water is basically opening up some sort of inspection hole at the threshold, getting water in there. The big concern, of course, is even with a thermal imaging camera, it cannot tell you about the structural integrity of that floor unless it's already vented, and then you'll be able to see that. But if wood is a great insulator, anything we put on top of the wood, foam plastics, carpeting, whatnot, are great insulators. So you could have 100-degree Fahrenheit showing up in your tick on top of that floor, and it could be post-flashover underneath, and the integrity is already gone. It's darkened itself down by the time you got there because it ran out of oxygen. But it's, operating over a fire on an unprotected or unrated wood floor is just not a good idea anymore. Same thing for the roof structures. I think everybody probably saw the firefighter in California that went through the roof. Questions that we don't know exactly yet, but how long were they on scene? How long was the fire burning? You never know, unless somebody says, I just saw the fire start, but that's very rare. All this needs to go into the risk assessment. All this is part of the size up. We've been talking about lightweight construction now for years and years and years, and it's the structure that fails, not necessarily the decking, right? And I think that's the biggest difference. Working with FD&Y in Chicago, I had the opportunity to, talk to some senior members of the department, and they were telling both Steve and I, they said, Dan, we don't get this because, we've been on this row house, and we'll be walking on the joist, the old 2x8 joist, and the flooring's gone or the roof decking is gone, and we've got no concern about falling through it, sturdy as can be. And Sean DeCrane, what he did was he went to a vacant house that was built around the 1930s or so, and he cut out a floor that was in there with a truck company that had the 2x8s in it and had the 1x6 tongue and groove, wood planking, and they put it on the UL furnace. They had a grant from NIST, and we compared it to the new construction, the old construction. And the old floor lasted a lot longer, 18 minutes versus, say, 8 minutes to collapse. But the method of collapse, the mechanism collapse, was very different as well. So the structure in the modern home collapses, but the decking is still good. Where in the older one, it starts to fail the 1x6s first, before the structure starts to go away. So the size of the penetration, the amount of the floor or the amount of the roof that's going to fail is very different. And your ability to sound the roof or figure it out or see what's going on is also going to be very different as well. Because the OSB or the plywood or whatever the decking is doesn't feel too bad, but in fact, the stuff that's holding it up could be gone, and then down you'll go. So again, all that fire service wide needs to be reevaluated. But you want to cool off a ventilation limit condition any way you can, or at least be ready to cool it as soon as you're opening it up. Coordinate it very closely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to give the room back to FDIC here, but I want to remind you guys, tonight is the Courage and Valor Run. For those of you who signed up, good luck on your run tonight. And afterwards, the National Fallen Firefighters has their Stop, Drop, Rock, and Roll. So two great events. Hope to see you guys there. Thank you all very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the show.